Those are people who are shocked of how well he played at Wembley, haven't watched enough of this show or Arsenal this season. He's been absolutely fantastic.
Thomas Tuchel's reign as England boss has started with a perfect 2 games and 2 wins. But England fans might be expecting a little bit more. I'm Jack Figg and I'm joined by Sun Sports tactics guru Dean Scoggins. And Dean, as always, you've got your 5 points ready?
I have, yeah. It was quite interesting, wasn't it? Good weekend for England, good weekend for Tuchel. Perhaps, as you say, Jack, they wanted a little bit more. But point number 1, covering the Myles, England's new superstar, Myles Lewis-Skelly, with a goal. But we'll look a bit at his positional play as well. Number 2, Rice is naughty and nice. Not quite everything right for Declan Rice, but obviously that great assist in the second game against Latvia. Number 3, imperfect 10s. Thomas Tuchel spoke a lot about his 10s, how they fit together. We want some more from Jude Bellingham, definitely. Number 4 is give pace a chance. Lots of focus on the wingers and the wide men, and not quite enough from Rashford at times, perhaps. We miss Saka there. And number 5, it's keep calm and hurry on. Where on earth would England be without Harry Kane?
So there was a lot made when Tuchel announced his first squad, but from the first 2 games in charge with his starting 11, what did you make of?
Yeah, I think generally that England fans would have wanted to see 2 7 or 8, 9-0 wins, right? Playing against Latvia and Albania, you know, the fans expect a lot. But Thomas Tuchel's only got a set period of time. He's only got this World Cup qualifying set. So he has to put his ideas in place that he wants for the World Cup. It can't just be, let's pick a team to beat Latvia. Let's pick a team to beat Albania. He's only got a finite number of days to work on the training ground. So, yeah, we saw some fairly encouraging little bits to start with. We saw some new players in there, and there'll be some other players to add as well. So plenty more to come. And
Tuchel spoke about a criticism he had before the game was maybe there was a lack of identity in the Euros. From the first 2 games, did you see that potentially they were implementing a bit of an identity?
Yeah, definitely right. There was, and you could see him react on the bench when they did something that he wanted them to do. The Harry Kane goal in the second game against Latvia, he was applauding the run from Rashford and the run from Rice. We know Harry Kane's going to put the ball in the back of the net from there. But those little things, he talked about acceleration of players and wingers and moving into those spaces. So yeah, we saw some pretty encouraging things tactically straight away.
So to your first point, Myles Lewis-Skelly got the call up for his England debut. There is a bit of a crisis maybe at left back. So did you expect him to start, or did you see it as maybe a bit of a brave call from Tuchel?
I think it was a brave call, but actually, yes, I did. When we did the preview show, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. We talked about inverting those fullbacks and talking about what Myles Lewis-Skelly has done all season for Arsenal. So he's been fantastic, and those are people who are shocked of how well he played at Wembley, haven't watched enough of this show or Arsenal this season. He's been absolutely fantastic for 2 or 3 months. And what was interesting for me is the 2 different roles that he played. So in the first game, he played like a more conventional left back, okay? Much more up the outside. We'll show a grab where we've got the fullbacks playing slightly off their touch lines, but more like fullbacks. So that was Kyle Walker in the first game and Myles Lewis-Skelly on the left back. And they went round the outside. They allowed the wingers to come off the wings. There was definitely a plan. And of course, his goal comes from that. He comes from a left back overlapping position. Magic pass from Jude Bellingham, which we'll come back to in a moment. But yeah, he played much more conventional left back. In the second game, he played a little bit more like he has been doing for Arsenal, where he comes in off that wing, plays as an inverted left back and gets on the ball a lot more in those positions. There were some problems with that, but what is impressive is that straight away, Tuchel has used an 18-year-old to play in those positions, a really, really young player in those positions, to then do something different tactically. So that shows how confident he is in him straight away.
So that was that left back. On the other side, again, another space that is equally as open, right back, Reece James. What did you make of his performances?
Yeah, I love to see Reece James back in there. He's a fantastic footballer. He's obviously one of, you know a lot about that with Chelsea, but there's this love from Tuchel for Reece James. You can tell he lights up when he talks about him. And I'd like to think he probably wanted to play him in both games, but he gave Kyle Walker that chance in the first game. But Reece James is another player who's comfortable equally going infield or out the outside. And so from a tactical perspective, if you want to change that in game where you say, right, it's too congested in midfield, which happened a lot in these games, let's get the fullbacks going the other way. Both Myles Lewis-Skelly and Reece James are capable of doing that. And oh my goodness, the free kick. I mean, you might be able to strike a ball like that, but I can't. Like, that was fabulous. And he almost looked shocked, didn't he? Like, that he didn't quite realise he'd hit it so well himself.
But that is a good point as well, because there was a lot made online, especially, of the fact that he didn't really celebrate. It was probably one of the best strikes of his career that he'll ever have.
Yeah.
And there was minimal celebration. Yeah. What did you make of that?
Oh, it's amazing. Like, you know, I've just scored my first England goal at Wembley. It's probably the one you dream of, right? You know, as a kid, put the ball down, bend it in the top corner against anybody at Wembley. And yeah, they were almost trying to get him to celebrate. But look, he's had a really tough journey, hasn't he? And to come back and be in the England team again, let's just fingers crossed he stays fit, because as I say, from a tactical point of view, for a manager like Tuchel, who will want to, he won't change our setup very much, but he will tweak things within game, he's going to be vitally important.
So there will be, you would assume, maybe a battle for the right-back position once Trent Alexander-Arnold comes back fit.
Yeah.
In your opinion, if everyone's fit, who is England's best right-back?
Well, that's a difficult one, that. I think that on paper, Trent Alexander-Arnold is the best footballer, but then we're going to probably end up having the debate about whether he should be playing in midfield or not. But I just love the dynamism of Reece James. Physicality as well, that comes into it. And look, we've just seen from a dead ball situation that he can be as good as Trent Alexander-Arnold. So, nice problem to have.
Right, point 2, Declan Rice, naughty and nice. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, it was a bit of a conundrum for me, Declan Rice, in these games. Look, I mean, let's not get away from it. Declan Rice is a fabulous footballer, one of the best players in the Premier League at the moment, and is one of the first names on the team sheet. But in these games, he becomes almost a little bit of a problem, where the midfield gets so congested. For Arsenal, he does so much forward running, driving runs. We've talked a lot on Tactics Exposed about picking the ball up and running with the ball into those areas, which is something that Tuchel wants. But of course, if you're playing with Morgan Rogers one side and Jude Bellingham the other as 2 10s, or Phil Foden and Jude Bellingham, they're in those areas of space that Declan Rice might want to run into. So he becomes the sort of bona fide number 6, the one who sits in front of the back 4. And I don't think I'm doing him a disservice to say that the best part of his game is not his quick one-touch passing and his passes through the lines. At Arsenal, that is Jorginho, Odegaard and Thomas Partey doing that job, and Declan Rice is further up the field. So in these two friendlies, they were like friendlies, they were qualifiers, they looked like friendlies. In these two games, you felt very much like Declan Rice was playing sort of this bit part role where he was sitting there in case we lose possession. And we'll show a couple of grabs where the midfield is just so congested all around the ball, and it made me feel a little bit like he was wasted. I found myself shouting, "Get out of the way, Rice! Like, let the centre-back do that job." Or when Myles Lewis-Skelly inverted and he was right next to Declan Rice, like, get out of that space. But then, in the second game, he makes that driving run as the underlap. Brilliant assist for Harry Kane. So we saw both sides of Declan Rice. And as I just said, when Tuchel is setting up his team here, he can't just be thinking, I'm picking a team to beat Latvia and Albania. He's got to be thinking, what is my team going to look like in all these different scenarios going forward? So obviously Declan Rice plays. Obviously, he's a world-class central midfield player. But I do think against the lesser opposition, they've got to figure out a way of not being so congested and the traffic jam that they created in that midfield.
So point 3, imperfect 10s. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, and again, we talked about that in the preview show. You've got to shape your team around him. He's our talisman now. You know, obviously there's Harry Kane, but, you know, the best English player in Europe is Jude Bellingham. So we've got to find that way. But again, I found it quite frustrating. In the first game, against Albania, Bellingham unlocks the door for Lewis-Skelly's goal, shows his absolute quality, turns in midfield in a tight area, gets his head up. He's actually got 6 players in front of him. I will point out Marcus Rashford makes a very, very good run in order to open up a passing lane for him. You'll get used to my terminology talking about passing lanes. But then he opens up that space for him, which means Lewis-Skelly can go around the outside. Amazing pass. But the flip side to that is that we end up in that 2-3-5 or 3-2-5 shape where the number 10s are getting in each other's way. Morgan Rogers and Jude Bellingham grew up playing football together. They absolutely love each other as players. They're best mates. mates. You know, they must have loved playing for England together. But that chemistry between them in international football needs a little bit of work. The same with Phil Foden in that first game. We found that those England players were on the edge of the area and even in the area at times, getting in each other's way. And there was a lot of pointing going on, as in, you're in my space, don't get in my space. And England had so much time on the ball and it was slowed down so much that it was almost a bit, traffic jam is the best way to put it. And the number 10s didn't get any spaces to work in. But as I say, that's against two teams who park the bus. So against the better nations, we might see a bit better.
And talking about fighting for spaces, Cole Palmer was obviously left out the squad through injury.
Good point, yeah.
His best position, you'd have to say, is centrally opposed to out wide. If he comes back into the squad, do you then have a conundrum of who plays number 10 out of him and Bellingham? Yeah,
it was interesting as well that Thomas Tuchel said afterwards that he thought Morgan Rogers operated better from the right when he made the substitutions and Rashford came off and Phil Foden came on. And Foden did this really clever thing where he actually came out of the congested area for the Eberechi Eze goal. He came out of the congested area and received the ball in a deeper position and he gave it to Eze in the space that he'd created. Again, maybe that was what Tuchel had told him to do as he came off the bench, but it was more or less just after he came on, so it was really clever. But yeah, Cole Palmer to throw in there as well, and let's not forget Bukayo Saka as well. So, Bukayo Saka won't be in a 10 position, but Palmer will be. So, and Tuchel said before the game, he's not going to be able to take them all. So a real conundrum there. But I tell you what, wouldn't be a bad problem to have if you're a manager and you've got to pick between Palmer, Foden, Rodgers and Bellingham, would it?
So point 4, give pace a chance. We were just speaking about the wingers there and the absence of Bukayo Saka. How did you feel like the wide men did in these two games? Yeah,
give pace a chance. Just for Figo to explain that he's a bit young for a John Lennon pun, but that's what I do, mate. Those music puns that get slotted in. Yeah, look. Obviously, Bukayo Saka comes back in. No question. England's best winger. And honestly, watching it, I thought we really missed him. And it wasn't just about the where he receives the ball and his tactical nous of taking the ball on the touchline. I've talked a lot in previous shows about he takes the ball on the run and his first touch engages a defender straight away. Look, I was a little bit disappointed with Marcus Rashford's sort of ambition. And maybe that's something to do with confidence, maybe something to do with, he had a lot of tactical instructions to deal with. Tactically, he did them great. In the first game, we had Jude Bellingham, Myles Lewis-Skelly and Rashford on the left-hand side. And the interchange of those three, I've talked about sort of musical chairs analogies when they move in those positions on the left-hand side before. They were really good. Rashford plays a part in the goal. A couple of times he runs into the position that Harry Kane moves out of to allow Jude Bellingham to make that run into the left channel. Lewis-Skelly goes up the outside. He does that really well. But then there's this enormous frustration with Marcus Rashford of beat him. Go past him. You've been given the ball 1v1 versus a Latvian fullback. There's this enormous space in behind. Either play a 1-2 off Jude Bellingham and go, or with your first touch, beat him up the outside. And actually then what happened is they switched Bowen and Rashford in the second half because then it had a right footer on the right and a left footer on the left.
We'll talk about the switch of wings in a minute, but one of the headlines was that, Rashford did start the first game, and even after the game, it sort of made some noise because Tuchel said he actually expected a little bit more from Rashford. So were you surprised to then see him start again?
No, I think he gave him that opportunity. And, and as I said, because they changed the tactical shape slightly in the second game where the fullback's inverted, he absolutely needed that, width. It's chalk on your boots, lads. Stay on the touchline and allow that space for the number 10s to go up the inside. And actually, I mentioned Declan Rice's goal before, but Declan Rice's assist, before for Harry Kane's goal, where Rashford plays a huge part in that when he's switched to the right, because the ball gets played over to the right-hand side and he makes that darting run. That doesn't matter whether he's on the right or the left. That's just because he's made that proper darting run, which stretches the defence backwards. And then the spaces open up for Declan Rice, who brilliantly noticed that space to go inside. He then gets the ball and plays it to Harry Kane. So for wingers, all the time I say this, it's not just about where you get the ball, it's the space that you create for other people. So yeah, look, it was half good and half quite not so positive. I want to see Rashford running at fullbacks.
Yeah, I suppose the trend now in modern day football is for your wingers to come in from the sides on your stronger foot. But we saw the switch. Did you like it? Would you like to see it again?
I did like it, yeah, for that game, and it was obviously something that an in-game switch that Tuchel felt that, and it wasn't because Bowen or Rashford were playing particularly badly. It's just that when you've lined up against a 5-4-1 formation, you've got so little space in those passing lanes, in those channels between defenders that you need to go outside. And because Bowen and Rashford's natural first touch would be to come infield and invert, as you say, then that space is then taken away. And because you didn't have the fullbacks going up the outside because they were coming in, the width was sort of, with the ball, was becoming narrower and narrower. And so, yeah, I liked it. I was a little disappointed in Bowen as well, but, he's not had many starts in international football, so deserves a bit of a chance. I was impressed by Eberechi Eze, and I mentioned him before from Foden's pass. He ran at his fullbacks, and then we saw what happened. All right, the Latvians were a little bit more tired then, but still, I like him a lot. With my Tottenham hat on, I'd love to see him in a Tottenham shirt.
And to the point I made earlier about Tuchel being a bit vocal about Rashford's performance, almost a bit Jose Mourinho-esque in terms of criticising his players in public for a reaction. Do you think we saw maybe a hint of Tuchel's personality there?
Yeah, we're not going to see him mess around, are we? And if he tells you that you've not played well, you've not played well. So that's absolutely fine. This is England, right? This is 15, 16 months away from a World Cup. We want to see the best England performances, and if those players aren't playing and aren't putting those in, then out they come.
So point 5, finally, keep calm and Harry on. Even I get that reference. But Dino, just talk about it.
Yeah, look, everybody who knows me knows that Harry Kane is my favourite ever footballer, and obviously the Tottenham link. But even now he's gone, I just marvel at him. And anybody who has the nerve to suggest that he shouldn't be playing for England doesn't watch enough football. Yes, he scores lots of goals against Latvians and Albanians and lesser nations, but who else is putting the ball in the net on that regular basis? And not just his ability to finish. What I just want to focus on very quickly is that little bit of movement that is why he scores all those goals in those games. When you watch Declan Rice's cross, brilliant assist, flashes across the face of goal, the finish is easy, right? I've seen you do that on the five-a-side pitch. I've done that from time to time myself. The bit that the top level, unless you're top level, you don't do, is the bit where Harry Kane moves before everybody else. So all of them are thinking, oh God, there's an underlap. They're all looking where Declan Rice is going. Harry Kane isn't. Harry Kane's thinking, I know where the ball's going to end up. And he ends up in that position. He's the only one on the move, round the back post to then tap it in. That was great. But the goal against Albania was utter genius. So the cross comes over, he's just about to pull the trigger, and the defender's about to come across in front. If it's me, if it's a lower level striker, anybody, most people across football, they probably have that shot early and it hits the defender because the defender's actually done a really good job in getting across. Not Harry Kane. Pauses for a split second, the defender sort of passes into the line of the goalkeeper and he just side foots it in the corner. And look, I know there's this whole thing about him not scoring enough goals in cup finals and big enough games, but if we're going to win one, it is going to be with Harry Kane in the team.
Now, there has been some frustration, maybe criticism amongst fans about Kane dropping into midfield, maybe trying to do too much. Do you think under Tuchel we see him play more as an out-and-out number 9?
He definitely, yeah, you're definitely right. He will do that, and he did do that much more in these games. I'm not saying he's not going to drop, because he will. His natural instinct is to link play. But what we saw with the Bellingham chance, which he didn't quite score, what we saw with the Myles Lewis-Skelly goal, which he did score, is that when Kane comes deeper into that more number 10 position, you get people go beyond him. And what Tuchel was talking about after the game in his post-match press conference was there wasn't enough of that acceleration runs past the ball. And look, it doesn't matter if it's Harry Kane who scores or anybody else. If the ball comes from a fullback or defender into Harry Kane's feet and he bounces it back to a midfield player, the next pass should go in beyond for those 4 flyers going past him. So link play, hold up play. He's the best passer in the team and he's the best finisher in the team. He's going to play every game until the World Cup, and let's hope that he gets to that 100 goals very, very quickly.